Dear friends, hello, Nacho here, and welcome back. Today I bring you an exciting fantasy and mystery adventure, inspired by stories that could have come from the very heart of our grandmothers. I invite you to stay with me until the end to unravel together each secret of the story. Let's begin. The initial scene presents us with a king afflicted by a serious illness, while his physician informs his children that there is no hope for a cure and that the sovereign's days are numbered. Falk, the eldest, bold and unscrupulous, proclaims he is ready to ascend to the throne. On the other hand, Fred, the youngest, sincere and compassionate, commits to caring for his father until his last breath. It is then that Samba, the kingdom's most distinguished hunter, intervenes to tell them that there is a cure, a pond in a distant kingdom across a dark forest, whose waters have the power to heal any disease. Upon hearing this, Fred decides to embark on the search for this miraculous remedy for his father. His elder brother intercepts him, warning him about the numerous dangers that lurk in the forest and his inexperience with the challenges of the outside. Ignoring the warnings, Falk chooses to go in his place. After obtaining his father's approval, he prepares for his journey. Samba, concerned, advises him to be cautious and warns him not to be seduced by the deceptive visions of the forest. Falk, disregarding the advice, dismisses Samba's words and, mounted on his horse, bravely ventures into the unknown. Venturing into the shadows of the dense forest, Falk carefully marks each tree he passes to ensure a safe return. Meanwhile, back in the safety of the palace, Fred remains by his ailing father's side, dedicated to his care. In the forest, the situation for Falk becomes less secure. He soon finds himself circling back on his own steps, completely disoriented. It is in this moment of confusion that an enigmatic woman appears before him. She observes his bewilderment and suggests that he seems lost, inquiring whether he knows the way to cross the forest towards the distant kingdom. Although she offers her help, she first requests some food and drink, claiming to be hungry. With disdain, Falk dismisses her request, asserting that he has no time to stop for beggars and proclaiming that he will find the way on his own, especially with the royal crown on his horizon. After leaving the woman, she exhales a mysterious white vapor that quickly disperses, clouding Falk's vision. As he dismounts from his horse, an inexplicable event leaves him wounded and unconscious. The woman, in a silent gesture, recaptures the vapor through her nose, while sinister forces infiltrate Falk's mind through his ears. The unexpected solitary return of Falk's horse to the palace triggers alarm among those present. Samba, the lead hunter, informs Fred and the king that Falk's absence, along with his horse, portends a dire outcome. With determination, Fred declares his intention to search for both the healing water and his brother. Despite his father's pleas, who fears for the safety of his eldest son, sensitive to the complex situation of his brother, he chose not to add more problems to his burden. Nevertheless, Fred, resolute and firm, secured the king's approval to embark on the journey. As he left the palace, Samba warned Fred that in the jungle he must stay alert and faithful to his mission. Fred nodded, understanding the importance, before mounting his horse and entering the thick of the forest. Shortly after, he encountered the same lady who had previously met his brother. When Fred asked her for directions, the woman requested some food. Kindly, Fred shared his travel provisions, a gesture that filled her with gratitude. She instructed him to continue straight to cross the forest and reach the kingdom where the water of life was located. Thankful, Fred expressed his appreciation. Subsequently, she asked for some gold coins, and he generously gave her all he had. Surprised by his altruism, the woman promised to assist him in obtaining the water of life. Intrigued, Fred inquired how. She explained that to access the Palace of Destiny, he would need to manipulate a mechanism hidden in a lion's statue at the entrance, which would allow him to enter the palace. However, she warned him about a curse that petrified everyone in the kingdom, but assured him he would find someone who, upon receiving a kiss, would revive. After this, Fred would have to face 3 challenges. Driven by curiosity, Fred asked who she was and how she possessed such knowledge. In the depths of the jungle, Fred encountered an enigmatic figure who declared herself a deity of those places. Her mission was to promote good and eliminate the malevolent forces corrupting the region. Filled with curiosity, Fred could not resist asking about his brother, to which the deity revealed that his brother had been seduced by his own arrogance and greed, becoming prey to the shadows that now misled him. After these words, the figure vanished, leaving Fred engulfed in a sea of doubts. "Where will I find my brother now?" he murmured. Almost in response to his dilemma, the voice of the deity echoed in the forest. guiding him to seek the water of Sanjeevani, but warning him about the dangerous influences of the shadows. Following this advice, Fred continued his expedition until he reached a new kingdom. There, in front of a gate guarded by a lion statue, he inserted his hand into the lion's mouth, activating a mechanism that opened the palace doors. What he discovered inside was a heart-rending sight. The residents of the palace were petrified, eternally trapped in the moment of their curse. Advancing through the sepulchral silence of the palace, where the stone figures of the servants seemed to watch him, and a somber mist enveloped the corridors, Fred reached a room where a portrait of Princess Linda hung. As he entered, he found her lying motionless on a bed, not petrified but showing no signs of life. Remembering the deity's precautions, Fred prepared to awaken the princess. At that critical moment, the words of the deity resonated again in his mind, urging him to act with resolve to rescue the princess and unravel the mysteries that lurked in the palace and his lost brother. And Fred placed a kiss on the lips of Princess Linda. She emerged from her lethargy, visibly puzzled and angered to find a stranger kissing her. "Who are you, and how dare you burst into my chamber to kiss me?" she demanded vehemently. Quickly, Fred introduced himself and explained his noble mission in search of the Sanjeevani water to heal his father. Still confused, Linda began to gradually regain her memories. She confessed that a dark curse had kept her inert for 3 years, and told Fred that the sacred water he longed for was not easy to obtain. Curious, Fred inquired further, and Linda led him to the ancient spring of the holy water. As they progressed, she described that to obtain it, Fred would face 3 arduous challenges, each announced by the ringing of 12 bells. Linda revealed that the well was empty and that the inhabitants of the kingdom had been petrified due to a curse that had vanished the water, knowing that it could nullify the spell. If Fred managed to break the curse, the Sanjeevani water would flow again in the well. At the site, Linda showed him a symbol in the well where Fred needed to place his hand. Upon doing so, a secret door opened from the ground. "Quick, enter before the bells ring," Linda urged, highlighting the urgency of the moment. Together, they ventured through the secret entrance that led them to a garden shrouded in mystery, ready to face the challenges that awaited them. They ascended to a structure shaped like a staircase where, as they rose, they encountered a mathematical equation outlined on the grass with wooden sticks. The result was incorrectly displayed, and according to the rules of the place, adjusting a single stick should correct the error. Fred, puzzled, was unsure which stick to adjust, as before them it read, 758 plus 32 equals 666. With Lena's guidance, they finally changed the plus sign to a minus by repositioning a stick over the 3, thus transforming the equation to 758, 92 equals 666. The moment the formula was corrected, a box containing a drop of a special chemical unlocked. Fred secured the drop, and although the 12th bell threatened to ring, they managed to return through the door just in time. Following Lena's advice, Fred poured the drop into a well, causing a section of the structure to collapse. Next, to face a new challenge, Fred pressed his hand against a seal in the stone of the well, causing another door to emerge from the ground. As he crossed it, the entrance sealed behind him, leaving Linda on the other side. Fred found himself in a room full of artifacts. After meticulously searching for another chemical drop, time seemed to accelerate. Despite having checked everything and the changes in the room's walls, he could not find the drop. In the end, his attention was captured by a painting on the wall, just as 11 bells rang and Linda, still outside, waited anxiously. Discouraged after finding the space behind the painting empty, Fred, in a final display of determination, scratches the wall behind the artwork and, with relief, discovers the coveted chemical drop hidden there. Hurriedly, he heads towards the exit, finding Linda, who greets him with an embrace overflowing with happiness. Together, they deposit the second drop into the well, undoing another portion of the curse and allowing moisture to return to the previously dry well. Facing the threshold of the third and definitive challenge, Fred places his hand on the stone of the well again, and as if by magic, another door rises from the ground. Linda warns him that this challenge will be the toughest of all, as dark forces will seek to divert him to prevent him from completing the test before the 12 bells. As Fred crosses the new entrance, he is transported to his father's room, who surprises him by appearing completely restored. Incredulous, Fred asks how such a recovery is possible. The king reveals that he healed himself, arguing that it is no longer necessary for Fred to continue with the trials or collect more water. While 6 bells ring, Linda from outside tries to alert Fred that everything might be a deception to stop him. However, Convinced by the words of his father and the king, Fred agrees to rest. Excited by the promise of being crowned king the next day, comforted by the news and the accumulated fatigue, he settles into bed. Yet, in the recesses of his mind, the echoes of Linda's warnings and the words of the deity still resound, urging him to stay alert. Determined and not to be confused by his surroundings, Fred rose resolutely and prepared to leave. At that moment his father and brother tried to hold him back by force.
"I have discovered it,"
Fred stated confidently. "You are nothing but illusions, shadows forged by the darkness to block my path." Firmly confronting these shadows, the figures of his father and brother dissipated before his eyes, revealing the last drop of the elixir he had so long sought. Upon collecting it, he went outside where Linda awaited him. They embraced, solidifying the love that had blossomed between them. With the last drop in hand, Fred poured it into the well, finally eradicating the curse that had besieged him and restoring the miraculous water to its course. He filled the bottle with the revitalizing water, and as Linda whispered for him to stay, he replied, "I must leave, but I will return for you." She, showing love and understanding, nodded in sign of waiting. As Fred departed with the water, his clothing caught and tore on the door, leaving behind a piece of fabric that Linda picked up and kept as a memento. Meanwhile, Linda used the healing water on the petrified inhabitants of the kingdom, who revived thanks to Fred's courage. The lifting of the curse was a cause for celebration for everyone. On his journey back to his own kingdom, Fred would face challenges he never imagined, such as encountering his wounded brother in a swamp, a twist of fate he had not even contemplated in his deepest dreams. Fred offers Falk a sip of miraculous water, which quickly revitalizes him and brings him back to consciousness. As Falk opens his eyes, he looks at Fred with a mix of confusion and surprise, asking what he is doing there. With a calm voice, Fred tells him that he has found the healing water, knowing that Falk had been unsuccessfully searching for it. As Fred recounts his discovery, a flash of greed lights up Falk's thoughts. He imagines the consequences of Fred delivering the water to the king, and how everyone might start to see him as a more competent leader, even worthy of being king instead of him. These thoughts fuel the shadows of evil that already surrounded him, the result of the dark forces that had corrupted him, making him cunning and treacherous. Seizing a moment when Fred tends to his horse, Falk acts stealthily. He fills his own bottle with stagnant water from a nearby swamp and swaps it with Fred's, while hiding the real elixir of life among his clothes. Fred, noble and unsuspecting of the betrayal, accepts the bottle without hesitation. They return to the castle together, and Fred sincerely presents the water to the king, assuring it is the revitalizing elixir. However, when the king tries it, his health deteriorates even further. At that critical moment, Falk steps in to correct the mistake and offers the real water Fred had found, instantly curing the king. The king, filled with gratitude and admiration, praises Falk for his bravery and for saving his life. Fred, on the other hand, is left perplexed and heartbroken, struggling to understand how his heroic act had been misrepresented and trying to defend his true version of the events, though the king no longer believes him. "After trying the water I brought, my health deteriorated." Following this, Fred confronts Falk. "I brought water of life, how did you obtain it too?" Falk cunningly replies, "The liquid you brought was not genuine. I found the real one in the forest." At these words, Fred firmly accuses, "You lie because you long to be king." Falk denies such an accusation. Then, Fred reveals a bottle with dirty water and argues, "This murky liquid was where I found you unconscious, whereas the water I carried revitalized you. Now I will expose the truth to our father." Falk tries to intercept him, but Fred heads resolutely toward the king's room. However, the king is asleep, and the doctor advises not to disturb his rest. Falk subtly smiles, seeing a new opportunity to devise his plans. When the king finally awakes, Falk advances and manipulates him against Fred, claiming that he attempted to poison him with the dirty water to ascend to the throne. The king, surprised, questions, "How could that be possible? He is my son. Why would he do such a thing?" Falk, persistent in his deception, presents a book on poisons he claims to have found in Fred's room, sowing doubts and distrust in the king's heart. Under the weight of Falk's power and influence, the king resigns himself to a drastic decision. "All right, I will expel Fred from the kingdom." However, Falk, always scheming, suggests a more sinister plan. If he remains alive, he might return for revenge. Better to send him into the forest under the guise of a hunt and order the hunter Samba to eliminate him. The next day, Fred leaves the palace on his horse, believing he's going on a simple hunting trip with Samba. From a palace window, Falk watches every move of Fred through a telescope, ensuring that the plan unfolds as he has orchestrated. Deep in the forest, Fred reveals his aversion to hunting. "I do not wish to hunt innocent animals." Moved by Fred's kindness, Samba decides to confess. "I must tell you the truth. Your father and your brother have sent me to kill you, but I cannot carry out that order. You are a good person. I will pretend to have completed my task by firing into the air." Samba pleads with Fred not to return to the kingdom, warning that if the deception is discovered, both would face mortal danger. The gunshot in the forest clearing echoes back to the palace, where Falk, still watching, believes Fred has been killed. Relieved and satisfied, he informs his father of Fred's death. Upon hearing this news, the king feels the dark power dissipate, overwhelmed by confusion and remorse, as he does not fully understand the consequences of his actions. In his solitude in the forest, Fred encounters a goddess who reveals to him, "I know the actions of your brother. He has been corrupted by dark forces, turning him into someone even more malevolent. Your brother has been the channel through which a grim force undermines the understanding and reason of your father." The deity confides to Fred, whose response is pure astonishment. "I do not aspire to the throne, nor wish to crown myself. I will choose to leave with Linda and stay by her side." The goddess warns him, saying, "If you leave, the darkness will spread and devastate the kingdom. It is essential that you return to restore order." Motivated by these words, Fred resolves to return. Meanwhile, under the influence of Falk, the monarch prepares to proclaim him successor, and preparations for such an event proceed. With his face veiled by a canvas, Fred crosses the kingdom's borders and meets an old friend preparing horses, who rejoices to see him safe and sound. Meanwhile, after a long time without news about Fred, Princess Linda decides to search for him. She encounters the goddess in the forest, who urges her to return to the kingdom or risk losing Fred. In the capital, the stage is already set, and with the people as witnesses, the moment of Falk's coronation approaches. Fred, still with his face covered, blends into the crowd. At the moment when the king is about to place the crown on Falk, Linda bursts in and tells the king, "I come to recognize your son, who undid the spell over the healing waters and alleviated your suffering." The king announces, "Here he is, my son." Linda, confused, replies, "He never set foot in my kingdom." He extends in front of the king a piece of Frate's garment. As the truth unfolds, she tries to manipulate the king again, but he, overwhelmed by disappointments, admits that these deceptions drove him to order the death of his son. Just then, Frate, who was among the audience, steps forward and reveals he is alive. The king, overflowing with joy, invites him to the stage. Immediately after, he proclaims that Frate will be the next sovereign and announces his union with Linda. Crowned at last, Frate offers his forgiveness to his brother for his previous actions, though he assigns him the oversight of the stables as penance. Likewise, he appoints Samba as his preferred advisor, thus closing this magical saga. If you enjoyed this narration, don't forget to like the video, share it, and subscribe for more adventures.